In Dalton, Illinois, political chaos is nothing new. But under Mayor Tiffany Henyard, it's reached a level no one saw coming. Long known for her fiery style and constant clashes with the village trustees, Henyard has always been a polarizing figure. But the latest village board meeting didn't just raise eyebrows, it ignited a full-blown political firestorm. What was supposed to be a standard public session turned into something straight out of a reality TV show. Originally scheduled for Village Hall, the meeting was moved to the local Park District building due to an overwhelming surge of concerned residents. They weren't just there for policy updates, they came to witness the latest chapter in Dalton's political saga. And Henyard didn't disappoint. Tensions had been simmering for months. Disputes over appointments, budget battles, allegations of misconduct. But this night, it all boiled over. From the moment the meeting started, Henyard made it clear she had no intention of following protocol. She dominated the mic with a performance that felt more like a personal power play than public service. What should have been a focused session quickly descended into chaos. The live stream had to be cut. Spectators sat in stunned silence. Henyard, rather than addressing real issues, seemed intent on turning the event into her own personal stage. And for many watching, both in the room and at home, it confirmed what they feared. Dalton's government was spiraling. Her behavior painted a picture of a leader more obsessed with control than community. And it wasn't just troubling. It was embarrassing. The real breaking point? A bizarre move no one saw coming. In an apparent attempt to undermine the scheduled meeting, Henyard announced her own official session back at Village Hall. Only 2 trustees showed up, nowhere near enough for a legal quorum. When the maneuver flopped, she didn't back down. Instead, she stormed out, jumped in her car, and sped to the Park District building, where the original meeting was still underway. What happened next was explosive. Henyard barged into the meeting, derailing the proceedings, and seized the spotlight with one infamous line. "I am the mayor of the village of Dalton." But the crowd wasn't buying it. Many turned their backs. The room chilled. She hadn't taken control. She'd lost it. This wasn't leadership. It was theater. And it confirmed what many had already begun to feel. Tiffany Henyard wasn't serving the people. She was serving herself. The tension wasn't just between Henyard and the trustees anymore. It had spilled into the community. Frustration was reaching a boiling point. The town that once held so much hope for her leadership now found itself stuck in dysfunction. Then, it got worse. A judge issued a temporary restraining order, blocking Henyard from making key appointments without board approval. The message was clear. Her power was being checked by the very system she was supposed to work within. But rather than reflect, Henyard doubled down. The more isolated she became, the more defiant her actions grew. Her refusal to collaborate or communicate only deepened the crisis. Dalton, once a quiet village, had become a battleground. A mayor in open conflict with her board. Trustees scrambling to maintain order. And residents left, wondering if their town would ever recover. What was once viewed as strong leadership has now become a symbol of dysfunction. And with every new stunt, every clash, every moment of chaos, Tiffany Henyard's legacy becomes more defined by controversy than by service. The question on everyone's mind now isn't just what's next. It's can Dalton survive this? The standoff between Tiffany Henyard and the village trustees had reached its boiling point. What once simmered beneath the surface now erupted in full view of Dalton's residents. Standing at the microphone, Henyard tried to reassert her control, but the crowd wasn't having it. What met her wasn't support. It was silence, scowls, and open rejection. Hope had long since drained from the room. Where residents once believed in her leadership, now there was only disappointment. The mayor's inability, or refusal, to build bridges had fractured the very foundation of Dalton's governance. Her actions weren't just divisive, they were seen as destructive. What was supposed to be a simple board meeting spiraled into another chaotic episode of Dalton's growing political crisis. And once again, Henyard was at the center of the storm. As tempers flared and voices rose, it became clear this wasn't just dysfunction. It was a full collapse of local government. Henyard's defiance of basic procedure, her constant need to dominate the stage, had created a toxic environment. Residents began asking the hard question: could Dalton survive this? Each passing week brought more spectacle than substance. Henyard's brand of leadership had become synonymous with chaos. Her infamous cry, "I am the mayor of the village of Dalton," had gone from a declaration of authority to a viral meme, a symbol of a leadership style many now viewed as unhinged. But the night was far from over. The crowd's frustration boiled into shouts. Trustees attempted to restore order, but Henyard was determined to push through her agenda. She tried appointing a new police chief, an explosive move that only further inflamed tensions. Her words were drowned out by the public's outrage. Then came her desperate move. She tried declaring the meeting illegal. It didn't work. The room erupted. What should have been a place of civic discussion became a battlefield of anger, distrust, and disbelief. Henyard, unable to regain control, was forced to abandon the meeting after just 7 minutes. The crowd, furious and fed up, booed her out. What happened next shocked even her harshest critics. As Henyard stormed out of the building, visibly furious, police officers stationed nearby stepped in to maintain calm. Tensions outside were just as high. Whispers turned into shouts. Then came the rumor that Henyard had gotten physical with a local official, an allegation that sent shockwaves through the already unraveling situation. Moments later, Mayor Tiffany Henyard was placed under arrest. It was a scene no one could have imagined just a year earlier. The once celebrated face of change in Dalton now escorted away in handcuffs, surrounded by stunned residents and flashing lights. The meeting that began with a chance for reconciliation ended in spectacle, scandal, and shame. And in that instant, it was clear. The political crisis in Dalton had reached its breaking point. The arrest was more than just a headline. It was the culmination of months of controversy, a symbol of how deeply the town's leadership had fractured. What began as hopeful promises under Henyard's leadership had ended in public humiliation and legal fallout. Dalton was no longer just divided, it was broken. And as the dust settled, one truth echoed louder than ever. This wasn't just a political collapse. It was the unraveling of a leader, a legacy, and a town desperate for healing. The arrest of Mayor Tiffany Henyard wasn't just the end of a meeting. It was the end of an era. Her once promising leadership now felt like a distant memory, a shadow of the bold reformer many had pinned their hopes on. And as she was led away in handcuffs, the people of Dalton stood frozen, watching the fall of a figure who had once seemed untouchable. What began as heated politics had escalated into full-blown crisis, thrusting a small Illinois village onto a national stage. Henyard's downfall wasn't sudden. It was the inevitable collapse of leadership built on defiance, division, and unchecked power. Her arrest marked a painful turning point for Dalton. For years, residents had watched their town buckle under controversy after controversy, with mounting dysfunction replacing progress. But this moment, this spectacle, was different. It was raw, public, final. In one last attempt to cling to power, Henyard had stormed into the board meeting, bypassed the agenda, and tried to ram through major appointments, including a new police chief, without trustee approval. But her authority had already crumbled. The room was done listening. Her once commanding presence was drowned out by the fury of a community she no longer led. As tensions hit their peak, the mayor's words were met not with applause, but boos, not with respect, but rejection. Then came the moment that would forever be etched into Dalton's history. Henyard, removed from the building by law enforcement, arrested in front of her constituents, her reign unraveling in real time. This wasn't just political failure, it was a public reckoning. From the beginning, Henyard had governed with a confrontational style, pushing boundaries, bypassing trustees, and making unilateral decisions on critical matters like police and legal appointments. Her refusal to follow basic governance procedures wasn't just controversial. It was, in the eyes of many, a violation of the trust placed in her. Dalton had given her the keys to lead. Instead, she steered straight into chaos. Even as court orders attempted to rein in her power, Henyard pushed back harder, portraying herself as a victim of corruption rather than a leader held accountable. But the public had heard enough. The courtroom battles, the infighting, the lavish spending, it had all added up. And the result was what residents witnessed that night. A mayor removed not by vote, but by force. Her downfall was dramatic, but perhaps inevitable. What started as a vision for change had become a cautionary tale. Henyard, once hailed as a rising star, had become the symbol of dysfunction in Dalton. A leader who alienated her allies, defied the system, and ultimately lost the faith of the very people she vowed to serve. Now, Dalton is left to pick up the pieces. Can the town recover? Can trust be rebuilt? Those questions hang heavy in the air, because this wasn't just a scandal. It was a collapse. Despite the mounting evidence against her, despite the legal pressures and public outrage, she rallied her supporters like a fighter cornered. Social media became her battleground. She portrayed herself as the underdog, the hero battling a corrupt system bent on crushing her. But by framing herself as the victim, Henyard only further isolated herself from those who had once seen potential in her leadership. The divide between her and the people of Dalton grew wider with each passing day. She cast herself as a defiant warrior. But in doing so, she ignored the very citizens who had put their trust in her. The community's patience ran thin, and as whispers about financial mismanagement began to spread, those who had once supported her began to reconsider their loyalties. Rumors swirled. Questions about lavish taxpayer-funded travel, questionable spending habits, and reports of funds diverted to personal interests. Henyard's lavish trips and high-end accommodations were difficult to justify, especially in a town like Dalton, already struggling to make ends meet. The allegations were serious. The more the public learned, the less they trusted her. But Henyard stayed defiant. She dismissed the allegations as part of a smear campaign, claiming they were designed to undermine her authority. But as leaked documents and eyewitness reports came to light, it became increasingly difficult for her to dismiss these claims as just political attacks. The financial mismanagement, whether intentional or not, cast a long shadow over her leadership. And Dalton's people were not willing to ignore it any longer. With legal and public pressure mounting, state and federal agencies, including the FBI, launched investigations into Henyard's actions, further complicating her position. The walls were closing in. Despite it all, she continued to present herself as the people's mayor. A small but vocal group of supporters stood behind her, rallying online, embracing the narrative of a political outsider fighting against the establishment. But even her supporters began to waver. Then came the breaking point. Henyard stormed into a meeting at the Park District building, a meeting she had no right to be part of, since there was no quorum. Her uninvited entrance created instant chaos. She refused to follow the basic rules of decorum, further angering both trustees and residents alike. The crowd reacted sharply. Loud boos, shouts, and even objects thrown in her direction. Henyard, however, persisted in trying to push through key appointments, including a new police chief, without following the proper legal process. But the crowd's rejection of her was unmistakable. Her attempts to control the narrative only intensified the frustration. What should have been a routine meeting quickly descended into disarray, and Henyard's inability to collaborate with others was glaringly obvious. Residents who had once hoped she could bring change were now left to reckon with the reality of her divisive leadership. A community that once believed in progress under her was now faced with a fractured political system and a collapsing trust in their mayor. The meeting marked the end of any remaining credibility Henyard had as a leader. The damage had been done, and it was clear that Dalton's government could no longer function under her reign. But Henyard wasn't done. She fought on, even as her political future seemed increasingly uncertain. Legal troubles mounted, financial scandals grew. Her credibility took a direct hit with each new revelation, but she refused to back down. Even the courts had intervened. Henyard had been served with a restraining order, prohibiting her from making certain decisions without the board's approval. But defiance was her trademark, and she pushed back against this latest challenge. The question now was simple. Could Henyard turn things around? Could she reclaim the trust of the people? Or had the damage to Dalton's leadership gone too far? Her political career, once brimming with promise, seemed to have reached the point of no return. With every passing day, it became more apparent that Henyard's downfall was not just a local scandal. It was a cautionary tale about the dangers of power, unchecked. Dalton watched as Henyard's future hung in the balance. The drama was far from over, and it was clear. The next chapter in this saga would shape the town's future for years to come. Would Dalton ever recover from the chaos she had unleashed? Would it find new leadership? Or would the damage run so deep that recovery was impossible? Only time would tell. But for now, the people of Dalton were living in the midst of a political storm, and the worst might still be yet to come.